Can you just state your name, Doug, so that way on the roll, we know you're here?
Douglas Porter.
Okay, thank you. So, and I have to note for the record that he's here via Zoom link. So, because we're supposed to put that in the meeting minutes. David Morse, Dwight Reinowitz, and Tim Young told me that they're not able to attend. In fact, I think David has a good excuse. He sent me a picture, which looks like someplace in the Caribbean or somewhere, that he said he could not make it in time. So I take that as a good reason. So, we'll note that. Jeff, do you mind starting us off in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic.
Thank you. I'll remind everybody about our meeting rules and guidelines, which really I don't think I need to keep on reminding since we are here in person. One thing that I do have to note that I have been reminded of is because we have one member who is here virtual, and I'll see if we'll how it works as far as seating alternates. When we take a vote, any person who's a commissioner who's present virtually, we're supposed to actually, unless it's a unanimous vote, we're supposed to actually go through a roll call for the vote. And what's been advised is that even if it were to be a unanimous vote, we do need to still go through a roll call of votes. So we'll do that. And the other is, thank you everybody for wearing masks. We just need to make certain we're fully masked up in accordance with the town hall guidelines here. That takes us to designation of alternates. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we need 2 alternates. So I'm going to see the 2 alternates who are present. That's Dean Gould and Doug Porter. I am going to note one thing for the record, and I know the answers to these questions, Doug, but I do need to ask you. I know at our last meeting when we had 2 public hearings on the academy and on the proposed text amendment for accessory apartments, you were not seated, but you were still present at the meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So in which case, since you were present at the meeting and have had gotten all the documents that all of us have received, it's fine to have you seated even during those public hearings.
Okay.
Chair's report, very brief. My usual thank yous to all of you as commissioners. Thank you to staff for all the work that gets done. There's been a lot of stuff. I know there's been a few last minute documents that have come out. So we try to limit that. We're mindful that we have our submission deadline, but some documents do come out. And so if they're appropriate to be sent out, unless they're massive documents, we do try to get them out to you as best as we can. So that's why some of them do come out as emails when the packets have already been issued. Next is there any citizens' comment not on an agenda item? Okay. That takes us then to meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes of September 23rd, and we have the meeting minutes of September 30th. What is the pleasure of the commission?
move to accept minutes of the regular meeting of September 22nd and the minutes of the special meeting of September 30th.
Who seconded that? So motion by Adeletta, seconded by Blackmer to approve the meeting minutes of September 23rd and September 30th as presented. Is there any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to go through the roll so that way we're kosher with what we're supposed to be doing per the advice of state law. So I'll just go through here. Joe Adeletta. Mark Blackmer.
Aye.
Sid Blodgett.
Aye.
Gail Dickinson.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. Aye. Dean Gould.
Aye.
Jeff Marcotte.
Aye.
Doug Porter.
Aye.
And the others are not here, so I'm just going to say no. So that does pass. And thank you for a good job with our meeting minutes. And doing it on time too. I know we have that time deadline that meeting minutes are supposed to be in, so thank you for doing that. So that takes us then to preliminary discussion. We were asked about having a preliminary discussion. Last time we had a business meeting, there was a request for preliminary discussion for the 580 Birmingham Road, special permit for events. That's the castle. We couldn't have it because nobody was present to speak on behalf of it. And they withdrew it.
Yeah, they withdrew that.
So we'll note that it's been withdrawn.
I can ask, does that mean that there are no special events taking place? Okay.
At the moment.
At the moment. Okay.
Yep.
That you know of.
That I know of.
We did then get a request for a preliminary discussion of 440 Route 198, a special permit discussion, but I don't see anyone is here to discuss that. So there isn't anything to discuss. Okay. Okay. So then we'll have to see what they want to do then. But we did put it on at their specific request. So I'll just have to note that there isn't anything. Okay, well, we will note that. There's always another opportunity. We do need to remind them that there isn't anything they can do with any of their plans if there's no permit then to be submitted. But this was for a prelim, so if they like to come next month, we can certainly do that. So we'll just note that no discussion was had. No one was present. I have 7:45, which means we can get to our two public hearings. These are continuations of public hearings. The first one is agenda item 8A. This is public hearing SP 6520838. This is actually a modification of an existing special permit at 150 Route 169. This is Woodstock Academy, the proposed construction of 150 new parking spaces at the Lewis Center for the Arts. If you remember last time, we had to continue this because we were waiting for the Department of Transportation District 2 to give a approval letter. So I'll note for the record that we have received a document dated October 5th from Connecticut DOT District 2. So that is so entered into the record. That's the only document that we have received. So that's so noted. That's where we left off. I'll open it up then to the applicant's representative. If there's anything you wish to discuss then relative to where we were. Again, that was the only document.
So Pete Parent, CJ representing the applicant. If you have copies of that letter. So
I think this went out to everybody. Does everybody have copies? And Doug, you have copy? Is he on video? We have to keep him on video though. Okay. I just have to hear yes, because we have to have it for the audio, Doug.
Yes.
Okay. So, and we also have to keep you on video to be seen during the meeting per the requirements of, so.
No. How am I supposed to take a nap if I can't have, I have to have the video on?
Sometimes people can take naps even with their eyes open. So I learned that in medical school,
No problem.
as I'm sure Dr. Dickinson has learned too. That's right, just holding on. So for hours on end. So, but yes, we do have copies of that.
So
So
there haven't been any changes to the plans since we last spoke. I'm happy to answer any questions, discuss anything the commission may want to revisit, but I don't have anything new with that.
I'll open up to Commissioner Joe.
Just want to return to the lighting comments that were brought up during the public hearing and see if the plans may now include turning off the lighting. Extinguishing light other than.
The academy is intending to follow the regulations as far as have that be a condition of approval. Yeah, so this can't stop the lights to be on the pole itself, but what you're talking about turning off. Something like that.
And speaking of lighting, I know this was raised during discussion. And I know the answer to this, I just want to make certain it's clear again on the record. The lighting plan you've submitted does meet our lighting regulations, including that it looks like well before the property lines, the number of lumens basically is zero for all intents and purposes, which well meets our lighting regulations. I know there was some question raised by two members of the public about lighting going into property that is a little bit down the road, but based upon the ISO diagrams on the lighting plan, that has been addressed as far as the height of the lights, the shielding of the lights, and the intensity of the lights, and how the spillage then, goes out, so to speak. So my understanding is that all has been addressed as far as how much lighting gets beyond where it should be, separate from lighting on in the middle of the night that isn't needed. So my understanding is that you have looked into that, and hence why the lighting plan is the way the lighting plan is presented. Am I correct?
That's correct. The lighting plan is designed to have 0-foot panels. The academy owns a piece of property between this property and the residence who had piece.
Okay. I just wanted to raise that again, so we've addressed it. So does anyone have anything else from the commission? Is there, Daily, I know you've reviewed this file. Is there anything further you have from a
No.
staff perspective?
No, I'm all
Okay,
Close the public hearing. Next step.
that would be. Is there a second? Okay, so motion by Adaletta, seconded by Blackmer to close the public hearing. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll go through the roll again. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer. Sid Blodgett. Gail Dickinson.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon. Aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. And as David Morse. Doug Porter.
Aye.
That so passes. So the public hearing is closed. Magically, we're going to take this back up under old business, however. So stay tuned. All right. No lack of files. The next is continuation of public hearing, proposed text amendment for the purpose of updating accessory apartment zoning regulations, Article 4A and Article 4B 2A. We had continued this so that way we would get an updated draft, take into account things we've discussed and also comments from Delia. I believe that did go out to everybody. So that is the updated draft for us to be discussing. The other is that I did reach out to the leadership of the 3 lake districts, which is Woods, Lake Bungay, and Quasit Lake. Preliminarily, they told me that they didn't seem to have any issue with what we're looking into or allowing. They did all note that they have their own private covenants and restrictions, which we're aware of, and that's not our domain. However, they have upcoming board meetings, and what each one of them requested, which is I'm fine with, is that we don't make a decision tonight because they want to have a formal board meeting and to be able to make certain their whole board has weighed in, each one of them, and then get back to us as far as they're fine or they have a particular issue. But I did have Zoom meetings with a number on each of the boards just to explain why we're taking this up and what's kind of in it. But again, they didn't seem to have any objection. They said, look, there are lots that can allow accessory apartments. And there are some lots that just can't allow really anything else based upon how big or small, the lots are. And they actually, each one of them has their own zoning committee or planning committee anyway that reviews things to make sure it's compliant with their own private restrictions. So we can certainly honor their request. So I did offer them if they wanted to come tonight. I did let them know that if we were to rework a draft, we certainly would make certain we can get copies to them. So copies of this updated draft were sent out, so that way they would be able to see what the wording looks like. So, but that's where we stand, unless anybody has anything further relative to the, getting input from the lake districts. That's where we stand with that. Is there any further, does anyone have anything further relative to the updated wording that that has been put together here relative to from our last discussion? Joe?
The back or second. The section D for district, section F, section 2. He was.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Yep.
Together.
Did you want to speak to that, Delia, about
Sure.
crossing off the minimum of 1 acre?
The state statute says that you can designate which zones or districts you want to allow these apartments in. I'm proposing that you consider not allowing them in the lake districts. The lots are so small that adding an apartment to potentially to each lot, in addition to all the vacant lots that can still be built on, could be overwhelming for traffic to get emergency services through those narrow roads. Maybe you compromise the water quality if the septic systems fail, that sort of thing.
Okay, so this is to prohibit them from the lake districts from allowing accessory apartments?
Well, it's not the same thing as adding language to prohibit them. It would be removing language that allows them.
But the lake districts are telling me preliminary they're not opposed to having it. And they actually do have lots that are big and can allow them, and they have allowed them.
Except the issue is the state doesn't allow you to have minimum lot sizes for apartments anymore. So you wouldn't be able to say the lots that are a quarter of an acre, you wouldn't be able to say they couldn't have the apartment.
But
So if
it-
you want to have it, I can unstrike it out and you can keep it.
This particular line doesn't mention lot size. It's just,
Well, it's in the list of permitted uses. So in your zoning regulations, for each zone, you have a list of permitted uses and a list of special permitted uses. So right now, in the community district, which is most of the town, your list of permitted uses includes single-family homes and apartments and a bunch of other things. In your district for the lake district, you also have a list of permitted uses and special permitted uses, and right now that's in there. I'm proposing that you consider whether you want to not allow apartments in that zone. If you want to continue to allow them, that's fine, but the lots, some of them are very small. And you might think, well, the lake associations may already have their own rules against it. But if you're relying on them to not allow it and they change their mind, then you might be disappointed. So I'm saying, don't rely on someone else to do the rules that you want to have.
Well, why would we, I just don't follow. Why, if why would we say no to it in the Lake District? There are many lots that would be perfectly fine for them.
Because if
So-
you allow it, all of the lots would be allowed. Even the
Correct,
quarter
but,
of an acre lots.
but some of
And
them,
the tenth of an acre
but
lots.
some of them may not be able to do anything because of small lots having setbacks and things like that, may not even be allowed in there. So I guess my concern is if unless the lake districts tell me we don't want it at all, and they otherwise have been able to do it, I'm just concerned why we would just suddenly separately say no to it. And there are small lots in lake districts that you really can't build much of anything at all meaningful.
say that the lake districts do have their own rules and regulations that would essentially prohibit the building of.
They can change them at any time.
No, that doesn't prohibit. It doesn't prohibit. They don't prohibit it. They have their own rules that are more restrictive in ways than what our rules are. Those are private covenants that they sign, that they adhere to.
Well, that makes it all that more important that those boards have their meetings. If they
Yes.
know we're suggesting that particular allowance be eliminated, so it essentially prohibits accessory apartments.
So another concern that I have is that when I worked in Kelly,
Yeah.
I was the town planner there from 2001 to 2004. And Alexander Lake, it's not the same around the whole lake, but a good portion of the lake has leased lots of very long-term leases.
Right.
But they used to have seasonal cottages, and they were replaced all over the place with year-round homes, and their septic system started failing, and they had to extend sewers out to the whole neighborhood. I don't know actually if it's to the whole development, but to an awful lot of them. And they Killingly had another neighborhood that was very old, that had small lots, and their septic systems largely failed, so the town had to extend sewers to them too. So
Yeah.
it's not
And
a variety of concerns.
And I've heard rumors that there's a lot of failing septic already in that district.
I haven't heard, but I would be concerned. Some of the lots are very small, and sometimes there's a small lot that they can't fit the septic system on, so they buy the lot across the road and they build the cottage on one side and the septic is on the other side. So just because a lot is small doesn't mean it won't be built on.
But again, I'm just concerned about us saying outright no, if they otherwise aren't opposed to it and are doing it in some of the lots. But it's something for us to consider. Jeff?
forgive me, but I don't understand when they're striking out that line 4. I would think that having a minimum volume would actually.
You're not allowed to have minimum lot sizes anymore.
Yep. Well, certainly, that's all the more reason we would want to hear from what the Lake District Board said.
If I could
Sid,
just look
well,
something
just
up.
one quick thing. Sid, go ahead, Sid.
So Jeff, you said previously that there may be large lots in the Lake District, which could easily accommodate an accessory apartment.
There are some of those lots. There's also small lots that may not be able to accommodate anything else. Yeah, it depends. There are different size lots.
Without being able to use some minimum lot standard, have a tough situation for us to be in, or their board. And
As far as what they allow.
Ruling that blankets everybody regardless of lot size, whereas the size of the lot plays such an important role for septic, building footprint, stormwater.
But otherwise, one of the reasons you're saying, Delia, to remove this is that we can't set a minimum lot size.
Right, and
Right.
currently in your Lake District, in your dimensional requirements and your standards for the Lake District, you have a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres, which makes most of the lots in the Lake District non-conforming. And right now, you don't allow an apartment on any non-conforming lot in the Lake District. But if you changed my yellow strikeout to not be stricken out, then you are allowing apartments on all lots, including in the Lake District. So I'm not trying to make it difficult for people who want to live in an apartment or need to live in one. I'm concerned about awfully small lots and the impacts on the water quality and septic function and all these other things that could happen.
I understand that. Also, don't want to unnecessarily limit things that someone otherwise might be able to do that the state's trying to promote.
Yeah,
Joe?
Even in the Lake District, if somebody wants to perform, not just Lake District, any request for an accessory apartment still has to get DPH approval, presumably. So if it's a small lot, for example, on Lake District, DPH says, and DDH comes back to say, yes, the current septic system can't support it. The additional accessory apartment, there's no room to expand it. Does that inherently limit what can be done?
It might, but
Mhm.
again, you're relying on someone else's rules and those rules might change.
Well, it's the same for, say, building codes or things like that. Things might change. That's out of our control in that regard. I think, we'll see what the Lake Districts say formally. But again, what I've heard from their leadership is they're not opposed to having accessory apartments. Correct.
So could we set up the wording for this, that, in the Lake District, no non-conforming lot should have an accessory apartment? So that way they have a conforming lot.
You can't do that under the new legislation. You can't have a minimum lot size for an apartment. It kind of does away with the minimum lot size. for
Yeah, but-
apartment.
But this talks about conforming versus non-conforming. That might be something to ask the attorney.
Because that would take care of the whole problem, because the non-conforming lot should only live in the Lake District.
What it says is, if you, any lot that you allow a single family home, you have to allow an apartment. And right now, because you have a section in the regulations that allows for development of non-conforming lots, it means all lots can be built with a house, providing they meet things in here, like for instance, if a lot was created improperly, that's not a legal lot. It's a chunk of land that has issues, like a crowded title or whatever. But if it's a legal lot, it doesn't matter if it's non-conforming, because you have a section in here on developing non-conforming lots. So then you couldn't say you can only put an apartment on a conforming lot.
Nancy?
Yeah, I would think that by saying that we limit to, or limit the accessory, don't allow it on non-conforming, that's sort of backdoor, limiting what they can do for lot. Because that's kind of what I'm hearing, and I think that is very true. It's another, it's a, scenic route to, lot size in this case.
Joe?
Just add that on the regulations that if you're adding accessory apartment, still, the accessory apartment still has to conform to setbacks and other regulations of zoning. Right, so, okay. That will not be allowed.
Correct. And actually, that's one of the things that, is important to keep in mind is, let's say the Lake District say, yes, we're not opposed to it, that we think it's good for folks in our area or their districts. Yes, some of those lots are sizable. Put all sorts of things in. They've expanded their garages, swimming pools, all sorts of things, depending upon the lot size. Some of them are, they may not be wide, but some of them go back deep to the lake. Yeah. Correct. Yep. So what would happen is if you can't meet the setbacks, you can't meet the public health code, let's say, then you can't put it in. Those provisions don't change, actually. And so what the state said is, yes, you would allow it. However, you still have to abide by all other aspects of zoning. And they're not at all changing when they made this law, other codes, like building codes, public health codes. Those still very much apply. So if you just do it because your lot just cannot do it, then you can't do it. So
if an existing home is non-conforming, they want to put it inside the existing house, no expansion, no additions, all in that same footprint, is that allowed?
Yes.
I would ask Rich to see exactly what he says legally, to get his input. That may be good just to hear from him, just to make certain we know what he says.
Obviously not opposed to that, but we do have a section on building on non-conforming lots and non-conforming uses. And so it allows you to expand it as long as it's not making it more non-conforming. In the past, that's been defined as not getting closer to the boundary line. So, you could ask the attorney whether maybe the intensity of the use might be making it more non-conforming. But you can't have a minimum lot size on apartments anymore. And in any lot that we allow a single family home, you have to allow the apartment. So if it's not conforming because it's too close to the boundary line, then you wouldn't be able to expand the structure to make the structure closer to the boundary line. But like you said, if the apartment is converting existing space to an apartment, it would be interesting to hear what Attorney Robert says. I don't see where in our regulations that would make it non-conforming.
We can still ask them just to make certain we're covered from a legal point of view. Can't hurt to ask them. So, in that regard. Okay. Is there anything further on this?
Motion to continue the public hearing.
Jeff,
Sorry, did you say something, Doug?
yes. I've always had a difficulty with the minimums, the limit on the square footage. In our current regulations, we limit it to 750 square feet. The new regulations have it proposed as either 1,000 feet or 33% of the existing floor, the existing house size, whichever is less. So if your house is less than 3,000 square feet, you cannot build 1,000 square foot apartment. I think it's discriminatory. I think the way it's written, wealthier people can build bigger apartments than people who might need the apartment more. I think it's 750 square feet. You'd have to have a 2,200, 2,300 square foot house to be able to build a 750 square foot in-law apartment. A 750 square foot in-law apartment is great for a single person. That allows them the space that they probably need. But if it's a household with two people in it, 750 square feet is small, can be restrictive. So I know that state regulations, this is what it says in the state regulations, that it can be the less of 1,000 square feet or 33%. That's the minimum. That doesn't mean we can't do something different. But I find I work with a lot of clients that are looking to build accessory dwellings, and we do struggle with that 750 square foot limit. But now you have it tied to 33% of the house. And I think it's wrong. I think it's discriminatory. It makes people that are wealthier and have bigger houses can build bigger apartments. And those are probably the people that may need it the least. But a lot of times parents move in with their children to help with the finances. Either way, either the children may need help or the parents might need help. And I think I think it's wrong.
Well, the state law is the state law that's going to go into effect. So we have no choice but to follow.
That's not true, Jeff. The state law says that's the minimum you can accept.
I'm actually in the middle of speaking. So if you let me finish, Doug, I can finish explaining. So, because I have the floor right now.
No problem.
What I was in the middle of saying is the state law is the state law as far as what it is setting as the minimum that you can have as far as the 1,000 square feet or the 33% of the net floor area of the principal dwelling. However, we can allow it to be above that if we so chose. So if we said that we wanted to allow 1,500 square feet or 50% of the square footage, we can do that. We just can't go below what the state says is the minimum. That's what the state is doing, but it very much does say, and I had that in my memo previously, that it does allow us to allow larger net floor areas, and it does allow us to do that if we so choose. So the wording that's in this proposal is the minimum that the state is now going to put into effect. We can go above that if we wish. And if we want to go above that, we can do that, provided, we just put that into our regulations. But again, that's what the state is setting as the new minimum that everyone has to follow, and you can decide to go above it anytime you wish in your regulations. So if we wanted higher, we could do that. And that's open for discussion if that's what we want.
That's my suggestion, is somewhere, I know there's a worry to have the accessory building overshadow the primary building. And I think that's where these, the less than come in. But I just think it restricts what a lot of families in town are trying to accomplish so that they can accommodate their parents' needs or their children's needs to afford housing, which is extremely expensive right at the moment. So I would suggest if we could provide some flexibility there beyond the minimums that are allowed by the state, I think that would be worthwhile.
And we would have to decide what we want to do above that minimum, how high we want to go. In the past, Woodstock allowed, I think, 950 square feet. Or where was it here? Or
30.
I had it in here somewhere where it was 900 square feet or 33%, and then it changed several times since then to the current, which is just 750. But if, again, if we want to go higher than 1,000 square feet or higher than the 33%, as long as those minimums are kept, we can go higher. Question is, how high do we want to go? Joe?
And I'm not sure either one of those would help the situation that Doug is describing. What we may need to do is add another clause that says, or a size of 950 square feet, regardless of the size of the primary residence. Because either we have to pick 33% of some.
You can't do that.
Can't do 950.
It has to either, the minimum has to be either 1,000 square feet or 33%, whichever is less. We can go higher.
But 1,000 square foot home. 33% of that is only 330 square feet. So the language of the lower number precludes that 33% calculation. And I think Doug said something like you need to have a 2,200 square foot home to get 700 square foot, and about 750 square foot at 33%.
726. I'm not, that brings up a good point. I'm looking at house plans.
Yeah.
The 3-bedroom home was only 1,200 square feet. Some of them are 1,900 square feet. They look the big house.
Okay.
When you add the square footage up, and he's right, 700 square feet isn't a lot for two people.
And so that's why I was suggesting that another bond that allows.
That's the world thinks that's more than enough. Or if you live in an apartment in New York City.
How many people here grew up in a small house? Because the house I grew up in was tiny. We had 5 people.
We can go above those minimums. The state allows you. The state just says, whatever you do, you can't otherwise limit below 1,000 square feet or 33%, whichever is less. But we can allow higher. So if we wanted, we could say we could allow 1,500 square feet or 40%, whichever is less. We just can't go below the state minimum. However, we want to do it above it, as long as it in no circumstance drops below the minimum that is allowed, then it is covered. Some places have looked at wording that is as simple as saying, well, if the state says 1,000 square feet or 33%, whichever is less, we're just going to up those numbers. And some places have looked at that. But again, we have to adhere to those minimums at all times.
Well, I would limit it to 1,000 square feet, if the percentage of the first dwelling is the issue.
Can do that.
But no, it's supposed to be clearly subordinate to the main dwelling. So question is 60% subordinate? 1,000 square feet or 60%, whichever is less.
You could do that, moving the percentage up, but keeping the 1,000, so you don't go above 1,000. That actually keeps in comport with the state law of not dropping below their minimum. However we want to do it. Sid?
Yeah, if we follow your point, whether it's 60% or let's say just 50%, at that point, for new construction, we're building duplexes that are owned by one person. I'm just trying to think, what's the difference between that versus an apartment, which seems like the intent is something considerably smaller than the main house. Looks like an addition and functions as an addition, not as a duplex. Not that I have anything against duplexes. It's just, I think by upping that percentage, I think we're kind of steering the discussion in a different way. Not that I disagree with you, I'm just not thinking out loud.
No, I understand.
Square feet, though, I don't care what, your percentage is, if you locked it 1,000.
But you're lodging
Square
1,000, so 1,000 or 60% of the primary dwelling, whichever is less. So if it's a 1,200 square feet dwelling, then that would be
600 square feet if you use 50%. So,
or if you use 60%.
so it's getting to be almost like a duplex if you add it on. I mean, if it's a separate structure, then it starts looking almost bigger than the original residence.
Hey, Doug,
Yes, sir.
so is your bottom line that it should be at least 750 square feet to function?
I think, and that's where I think, democracy is a series of compromises. I think this is an argument that we had a few years ago when we changed the regulations. And I think we came to that compromise that 750 square feet worked. I can tell you, my experience with clients since then is that the 1,000 feet would be much more accommodating for if there's two living parents or if there's a spouse and two spouses. It's just, as you age, people need more space for accessibility in their bathrooms, and they also may need space, separate bedrooms. And we build a lot of houses for older clients, including myself now, as I'm in that elderly group. And a lot of people require separate bedrooms now for medical reasons. And so now at 750 square feet, it's sometimes difficult to get two larger bedrooms with larger bathrooms and still have a living room, a kitchen, and an entry area and things like that. It's not, it's close. 1,000 feet works. I think that helps. Is it 900 feet? Maybe, but that the law says that you can't restrict it you can't put a square footage of less than 1,000 feet. And then the other caveat is the percentage of space.
As long as we adhere to that minimum that the state law sets, we can
Yep.
go above it. Gail's point is well taken, that if we set the 1,000, which is what the state says is one option, but go up on the percentage, you're above what the state sets as a minimum, and that's fine. That's not a problem. That's one way of looking at it, I guess. This is how we want to configure it.
And then you're
So-
not quite as burdensome for the smaller houses. And I'm not sure that 60% of the square footage accessory apartment really makes it into a duplex.
I understand where you're coming from in that regard, though, Sid, about that. Did we want to see about upping that percentage then, which we can certainly do? Keep the 1,000 square foot, but go up? Do you have something, Jeff?
No, it wasn't, calculation, it was the further since I. It happens next door, regulate how they use the accessory apartment, if they rent it to somebody or.
You can't regulate
We
that
don't
anymore.
regulate that.
Well, it says it can't regulate. The regulation should not limit the ability of the town to prohibit or regulate the use of accessory apartment for short-term rentals or vacation stays. Well, we can't regulate.
But you can't regulate, say, it's only limited to in-laws or someone over a certain age or something like that, which we don't currently do in this stuff now.
So,
But the whole point is to create a place that anyone who's living.
effectively, it would be.
But again, the state law is the state law, so we have to abide by what their minimum requirements are. There's
And
no-
what that does do is create some affordable, not in the formal sense of affordable, but in the general sense of affordable housing. So that it doesn't have to be in-laws, it could be kids.
Mhm.
Who are living in the apartment.
And that is an important point that's been made, that there certainly is a difference between affordability, the way the state defines it, which can be very strict criteria, versus what's affordable otherwise, which is still a very important thing to look at and see, where we are. But as long as anything we do meets whatever the state says for minimum requirements in general, we can go above it or beyond it. Sid?
So just to kind of get a visual, I was here at the time of was it Eisenhower Estates, 97, West 198. Those were duplexes, some of them, aren't they?
Not approved that way, but then we have to change the regulations. They could get tweaked in there.
One of the north hand side too.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
However, the state law does say, and that indeed, that if this town wanted to prohibit or limit the use of accessory apartments for short-term rentals or vacation stays, we can still do that.
Because, right now we've been talking, to make this apartment fully utility. But it's also, somebody can just put a rental for extra income. We can make an accessory apartment just to have a rental apartment.
We could prohibit that.
Just advertise apartment rent.
We could prohibit that if we wanted. The state law doesn't, the state law says here that it does not, this shall be interpreted and enforced such that nothing in this section, this is the state law, shall be in derogation, oh, they like to use nice words, of applicable building codes, but also the ability of a municipality to prohibit or limit the use of accessory apartments for short-term rentals or vacation stays. So a town says, you can put an accessory apartment in, but if you're going to start using for short-term rentals or vacation stays, and we have zoning regulations that say you can't do that, or you have to
What's the
meet
definition of short term for short term rental?
What's short term? Is it? somebody
Hard
wants
to regulate.
Yeah, but that's what they say. I mean, again, this is what's in the state law saying that, municipalities that want to regulate or prevent that can still do it. If we don't, then it's allowed.
But not long-term rentals, so.
Right. I don't know how they define short-term
if you
rental in the
want to
statute.
build an accessory apartment for extra income in your retirement. And it's a one-year lease, that's not a short-term rental.
But again, right now, we say we don't prohibit that, for example. However, the towns can still do whatever they say relative to short-term rentals and vacation type things.
If you are regulations prohibiting short-term rentals or vacation rentals.
Well, when I was zoning officer, if I found out about an Airbnb, I considered it to be a bed and breakfast, and they needed a home occupation, and which requires approval from the health department because the water has to be potable, that's provided to that space. But short-term rental would be an awfully hard thing to regulate because you'd have to constantly be on the lookout. How are you going to find out how these spaces are being advertised, or maybe it's word of mouth, or it could be online, or it could be in papers, or whatever. It'd be awfully hard to prove. So you could have the rule, but it would be hard for anybody to find out and enforce.
Did somebody come in today and apply to build additional space without calling it an accessory apartment, or maybe just call it an apartment with the full intention of renting it out as income?
Yeah,
You can do that.
but they're just, right now, they have to be, there's more standards than what's being proposed. There's minimum lot size and stuff like that.
So that has to be complied with. Okay.
And some of the cities go real after the places that do these rentals because they put taxes on it as a lodging tax. That's why you've seen some of the cities go after, these entities because they have lodging taxes and they want to apply it. So, but otherwise, the state law doesn't trump over whatever a town wants to do relative to short-term rental or vacation home type, a vacation for rental. So so if the town allows it, the state law doesn't change that. So the real focus of this state law, and I was in on the public hearing, I actually stayed through the entirety of the 24-hour public hearing. Fortunately, it was on Zoom, so I could just be sitting in my bed. Was that the two things the state really wanted was to three things. One is towns that don't allow accessory apartments, of which there are a number, they have to allow them. Number two, they don't want a convoluted process like a special permit process, which is what some towns do, saying, yep, we allow them, but now you have to go through this massive process. Woodstock doesn't require a special permit process. And the third was they wanted to make certain that no town would say, yep, we're going to allow it, make it easy, but we're going to make it so ridiculously small that no one will ever build them. And that's why the state came up with what it did. Those were the three principles that they were pushing for. And how on this, as far as the provisions they came up with. Those were the three goals. And they were very clear during the public hearings, the people who sponsored the legislation, that those were the three goals and they wanted it statewide, hence the state law. So,
Just some numbers on this, depending upon how the size of existing houses in Woodstock, if we want to pick a number like 1,200 square feet, I think Doug mentioned houses of that size as being not uncommon. To get 1,000 square feet as a minimum, you have to go up to like 84% of the primary residence for 1,000 square feet, which is less. So, 84% of a 1,200 square foot house would allow that 1,000 square feet. 84% of a 10.
1,000 square foot accessory apartment for a 1,200 square foot house, Julie, is just a duplex.
yeah, that's up there. That would be quite up there.
Accessory.
So,
But you were mentioning 50 or 60%.
Right, 50 or 60%.
so we have to play with some numbers, I guess, and think about, how many houses there are there, 1,200 square feet or 1,500 square feet or 2,000 square feet, or at what point do we want to look at saying, an accessory apartment close to the size of the existing residence is okay.
Well, that is that again, that is a concern. If you start having that percentage too high, then it can be very, very sizable relative to what the primary is, even though it won't be 100%. So, correct. Yeah. The other way to deal with that as well would be, to up above 1,000 square feet. But again, if you do the 1,000 square feet and go up on the percentage, whichever is less, that percentage minimum is higher. So you're allowing bigger ones, even if you're not going to meet 1,000 square feet. So, but we can see where we stand, with the numbers. It sounds like, in a sense, from a consensus point of view, even though we're not taking any votes in public hearing, that there's an interest to see what might be workable above what the state minimum is in some way. And that we can certainly look into and see what might work out. The other is to keep in mind, whatever we do end up codifying into the zoning regs, doesn't mean we have to be stuck with it for 20 years. If we find, say, in a year that, hey, there are some issues and we might need to go higher for some reason, we can always revisit that. In fact, that's part of what, we do many times, looking to see what we're finding, what works, what doesn't work, what might need to be updated, things like that. And looking back in the regulations, clearly there's been times that changes with accessory apartments have occurred multiple times. Joe?
The question we might ask the town assessor to, I don't know their systems obviously, but to identify the median square foot size of personal property of single family residences from the tax rolls or assessor rolls.
We can ask. I don't know what their search function is.
It takes a lot of work, and okay, so maybe we don't get an answer, but if they can sort that.
So that would be, what is the median square footage of single family? Yep.
I did that based on the median house and the median price for square foot.
Yeah.
It comes out to 1,772.
Okay, great.
That's not, official, but
Right.
that's a pretty probably good estimate.
Great.
of
Okay.
the average house size.
So that would be over 1,000.
In which case then you'd be limited to 1,000.
Yes, I think.
So maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Well, we can formally ask the town assessor and see what their first search function is. Yep.
Work with them, have some basic.
We can see, they may also be able to, depending upon their search function, say, here's the median square footage, but by the way, we can break it up to tell you roughly how many fall into these different size categories. They may be able to. I don't know their search function, but certainly can find out. They have a database.
So we had the number, I think, Buddy said there was some 1,200 square foot houses. So if we go with 1,000 or 50%, whichever is less, we're back at the 600, which is less than, he said 750 is too small. Now we're down to 600.
Oh, there's a lot of people who live in small apartments like that.
Right.
I mean, it's.
Well, no matter what we do, it's not gonna, there's no perfect formula you can come up with. But certainly going above what the state minimum is not unreasonable to do to make it, more workable for people in town, however that number comes up. And if we're,
What Doug's saying, and we, it's tough to say somebody have to live in one room, but by the same token, we can't, it's not, I don't know, we can't make it too big. You can't make a 1,200 square foot house, add 1,000 on, or like Sid says, we're making duplexes everywhere.
well, why don't we see what we can get from the assessor's office? And see what they're able to get us as far as some numbers, as far as what the median is, but also do they have data for the numbers in various size ranges to get some idea? The median would really give you a good idea because it's not the average. It's really just the middle of the road number. So that's the nice thing about the median. But we can certainly see what those numbers are and see what might work as far as allowing potentially bigger ones, but also not making it so big that it turns into what Sid mentioned is kind of a de facto type duplex. So, which is certainly a valid concern.
One question that.
Yep.
These accessory apartments, because now we mentioned building it inside of another house, or accessory apartment. Does this require a whole new septic system, or is this just added on to the one existing? So now if we're doubling, we get a system designed for 1,200 square foot house, you add 1,000 to it. Now is that, you get 2,000 square foot house, is that septic system designed for that?
It's public health code.
It's based on the number of bedrooms, not the number of,
Not the size.
But so if you put another on, if we're gonna put that,
Put two more bedrooms on, it, yeah, NVDH has to approve it.
And if NDGH says, yeah, you want to put that in, but those additional living spaces, your septic can't comply, we're not going to give you,
accessory on still has to be-
you're still limited. Yep, so all building codes, public health codes still have to be conformed with. Yeah, the state law does not overarch, doesn't get rid of those. So if you can't put it in because your septic isn't big enough, they're not going to issue you a permit and you can't put it in. If your septic allows, or you decide you want to put it in and expand your septic, you can do that, but all those other codes have to be followed. So, Joe?
And just keep in mind that although we're talking accessory apartment, it can be a separate structure altogether.
Yes, it does not have to be attached. It can be detached. Yes, it has to be on the same lot. So if you have two lots together that you both own, it has to be on the same lot. So you just merge your lots if you want. So
May not be the same well, and may or may not be the same septic system.
That's
As
correct.
long as.
Yep. Yeah, and you meet all other aspects of setbacks and things like that, correct?
And it doesn't have to be attached, it can be.
It can be detached. As long as it's on the same lot as the primary residence, it can be attached, or detached. So if you want to have it, next to the house and you have a covered porch between the two, you can do that if you want. If you want to just add it right on to the existing structure, you can do that, as long as you're meeting all the other stuff and it's on the same lot. The state allows it. What the state didn't want is for people to say, well, I'm going to put this on some other lot that I own. It has to be on the primary lot. That's what the state was clear about.
Of course,
So
you can build a house on the other lot that you own and just call it a house.
you could if you wanted. There are people who build these mini houses. You watch them on TV and they have it on the trailer and it just moves from place to place, evidently.
Dot Burnwood actually built a tiny house.
People do. Some people like the small little ones,
Where does she live?
but
I'm not saying.
anything further?
She's in Brooklyn.
Sounds like we'll have some additional info to get, and we'll also hear from the 3 Lake District boards in that regard. So then we'll see where we stand, and then we can see what some of the numbers are as far as what to do percentage-wise. Anything further we need to look up or get info on? We have the list of stuff to get, so we'll get that info and get it out in time for our meeting packets for whenever we meet. When is it in November? I forget. It's the
18th.
18th. Okay. Okay. Well, we would then need to continue the public hearing.
Move to continue the public hearing.
Second.
And are you okay with it saying continue the public hearing to the November 18th at 7:45 PM? Okay, so motion by Dickinson, seconded by Frazier to continue the public hearing on the accessory apartment item. I won't read the whole wording to November 18th at 7:45 PM. Do we have any discussion on the motion? I'll go through the roll then. Joe Adaletta. Mark Blackmer. Sid Blodgett. Phil Dickinson.
Aye.
Nancy Frazier.
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould. Jeff Marcotte. And that's on, and Doug Porter.
Aye.
That so passes, so we will note that. And we have a list of things that we'll get info on. Okay. That takes us, where are we? Non-residential zoning permits. We don't have any, I believe. New business. Do I have, oh, it's in my other folder. Too many folders, unfortunately. So one of the things that we sent out, and I sent an email out to show an updated draft, was we had talked about one of the things we wanted to look at was the update to the land use fee ordinance. And back in, I had to remind myself on this. So back in November of 2017, Delia and I had proposed out an update. And then the commission approved the update in February of 2018. The Board of Selectmen, however, never decided to take it up or do anything. And even in 2019, we couldn't get them to, it's not the current board, it was a prior board, couldn't get the prior to move on it. In 2020, things really changed as far as what we were able to do. So what this updated draft was, I asked Delia and Ashley looked at it, and Rich to look at this draft to see what might need to be updated. We don't have to necessarily get into a detailed discussion tonight because I know this last update just was sent out by email. So I apologize for going out late, but I had noted a couple of items that Rich had commented upon that he suggested that we put into the draft. So what I really wanted to do with this is get this out to you. So you'll have some time to start reading through it and see exactly what's proposed. We kept basically nearly everything that was proposed previously, other than some modifications to clarify process and make it clearer and make it actually things that make sense that's being done or things that are just not being done and don't need to. And Rich had a few items relative to certain legal items that had changed in state statutes since 2018 that we have to adhere with. So happy to discuss it tonight if you want, but again, I know you're seeing this latest draft, on short notice. So I just want to get this out and have it on the agenda so to say, hey, here's the proposed update. See what people think. We'll certainly put this on for our upcoming meetings, but at least then you have it and we'll have time to review through it. And I think there was in the meeting packet, it wasn't in color. So what I emailed to you, anything in red is either proposed addition or deletion in the email. So that, I don't know if anyone has any questions about that. It's one of the items we talked about, we wanted to look further into. So that's why sending it out. And I want to thank Rich and Ashley and Delia for looking through this update. And I think that we've had some good input into the mechanics of how to make this work. And some items that quite frankly weren't working, and Delia at the time, you had pointed those out to us that, hey, some of these things need to be clarified because the way we have it worded is actually not making sense for the way it needs to happen.
Right.
So you would put a lot of updates into it as far as making that work better. So does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Now I gotta find the right folder to put it in. Okay, so we'll have that as a continued thing for us to look at. So, and we can go accordingly. The next takes us to old business or unfinished business. SP 6520838. This is 150 Route 169. This is the Woodstock Academy item, we are out of public hearing, so we're not going to take any further input from other than our own discussion on this. So normally the way we'll kickstart our discussion is if someone wanted to make a motion, or we can just delve into discussions based upon what's been what we discussed in public hearing. I'll defer to what the commission wishes to do.
I would move we approve with a notation that, that will comply with all lighting regulations, including the timers and the lights that are on and off. That would be that.
So including timing of lights on and off.
Right.
Okay.
And, you know, there's nothing going on at the Loop Center. Does that mean that the lights won't be on in the parking lot? I mean, that would make sense to me. Isn't the regulations are only on for an hour after the activity is done?
Correct. The regulations do say that.
So if no activity or business being done, they should be off, right?
According to the regulation, unless there's some sort of lighting needed for safety.
Right, for security.
But usually that type of lighting isn't the full lighting.
Yeah.
Correct. That is correct. Okay, is there a second? Okay. Which one of you? I didn't catch who. Okay,
I'll try it first.
you guys want to duel over it? No? Okay. So motion by Dickinson, seconded by Blackmer to approve. So really it's approve the modification special permit application as presented, provided that it complies with all lighting regulations, including the timing of lights on and off. Okay. So that's open for discussion. One thing I will mention is that we are going to also have to put in about the approving the ENS control bond for $7,975. And do we also have to put in that we say the ENS plan has been certified?
Yes.
So we have to have that stuff in. Another item that I just going through my notes, it was raised by someone that do we want to have a statement on sheet 7 that the owner is responsible for all of the post-development phase items that are listed? That came up during the discussion. And there was also came up during discussion at the public hearing about the prior special permit condition of approval number 4 that says 2 bleachers at a height of 12 feet maximum to seat 360 total people to removed and stored out of sight in the winter months, whether we want to keep that condition or remove that condition. I think those were all the items that I had marked down that people had raised about possible conditions. So I'm just raising it just because that was items brought up during the public hearing.
Well, the bleachers aren't necessarily pertinent to this parking lot, which is supposed to be for the Loop Center, right? And the bleachers are on the football field.
Yeah, I'm raising it because that was just brought up during the public hearing as far as keeping that condition or not keeping that condition. So those are all the things I took notes on as far as different things people raise. But open certainly for discussion. Sid?
I would like the approval to reflect the responsibility for stormwater as we discussed last month.
So you would like that to, what about the stormwater? I mean, the sheet. Oh, okay.
The final condition maintaining.
Okay. We can have that as
That's on the Mylar already, isn't it?
those are items that are on the plans. There are, I think, 5 of them, post-development phase items, but what came up during public hearing was having a statement that was clear that the owner is indeed responsible for all 5. That was raised. So, but it said if that's something we can have that as an additional motion to make it clear, if you want to do that. So, is there a second to that? So let me just write this down. So, because this is a secondary motion. Who seconded it? Dean did. Okay. So Sid, what exactly did you want? You wanted to all of the post-development phase items, which are on sheet 7, I believe. Wanted that to be clear. The owner is responsible for them all. Is that basically your wording? Okay, so let me just mark that down here. So, all post development phase items. We have that here. And if I remember correctly, during the public hearing, there was no objection that was raised by the applicant or the applicant's representative to that. Okay. So that's the motion right now, which is the secondary motion to amend the primary one. Do we have any other discussion on that? If not, I'll go through the roll. Joe Adaletta? Mark Blackmer? Sid Blodgett? Gail Dickinson?
Aye.
Nancy Frazier?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon? Aye. Dean Gould?
Aye.
Jeff Marcotte? Doug Porter?
Aye.
Okay, that so passes. So right now the motion adds that in. So,
Do we need to add in the ENS?
yep, that's the next we need to do, is to add in approving the ENS control bond for $7,975. And what's the right wording, Delia? Stating that the ENS plan is
Certified.
certified. That can all be in one motion if we want, but we do have to have that in. I'll defer if the commission wants to do that, but it is required. Is there a motion?
Primary motion, so I make a secondary motion.
Yes, you can, absolutely. Are you so doing that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that you, Sid? That seconded? Okay. So the motion by Dickinson, seconded by Blodgett, is approve the ENS control bond in the amount of $7,975 and certify the ENS plan. Any discussion? Okay, I'll go through the row. Joe Adaletta, Mark Blackmer, Sid Blodgett, Gail Dickinson,
Aye.
Nancy Frazier,
Aye.
Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould, Jeff Marcotte, and Doug Porter.
Aye.
So that further amends the primary motion. Is there anything further that we have on this motion? Any other conditions or anything that I left out that was raised? Otherwise, I have to go through the special permit criteria. I didn't hear any motion to that effect about the bleachers. So is there any motion to that effect? Okay. So right now, there's nothing else. So I'm going to go through the special permit criteria before we take the final vote. So I just have to go through this on the record. I know it's a bit lengthy, which is fine, but I'll just quickly go through it. So we're not making any approval with conditions until we've evaluated the proposed use or activity relative to the criteria. And we're stating on the record why. We've actually held a public hearing. So we meet that criteria. So I'm going to go through the following. I'll just ask if there's any objections. If there's no objection, that's fine. So it's compliance with the zoning regulations of the town of Woodstock. Is consistent with the plan of conservation development, the plan of open space and conservation. It will generate minimal offsite adverse impacts on the surrounding area, including but not limited to adverse impacts on the environment, the character of the area, including any natural, historical, or cultural features, the property values, the reasonable use, enjoyment, and development of properties. It will neither adversely affect ground or surface waters nor endanger drinking water supplies. It shall have the approval of appropriate agencies. It does not adversely impact existing traffic conditions, including a finding that streets serving the proposed use or activity are adequate to carry any additional traffic generated by the use activity, and that no traffic safety problem, for example, poor site plan, will be caused or significantly aggravated by the use or activity. It will provide unhindered emergency vehicle access. It will not adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare. And it will meet all the following standards as applicable: adequate landscaping and buffering treatments, stormwater management, erosion and sediment control. Go to the next page. Lighting, signage, floodplain, dimensional. those are all the criteria. I didn't hear any objections, so it looks like we feel that it is all met. So we've stated that for the record then, that there was no objection to any of those. So that then takes us to the main motion that has been amended twice. Is there any last discussion on that? I'll go through the roll then. Joe Adaletta? Mark Wagner? Sid Blodgett?
Aye.
Gail Dickinson?
Aye.
Nancy Frazier?
Aye.
Jeff Gordon? Aye. Dean Gould? Jeff Marcotte? And Doug Porter?
Aye.
That so passes. I'll further note on the record, and so that way I don't have to read the entirety in, but we've granted this approval. The commission may impose conditions and modifications with we've done. And the commission may require the applicant to submit periodic reports as may be required. Also, that if we find or have reason to believe that circumstances or conditions upon which a special permit is warranted may change over time, the commission may call for a review of it. And also that we've relied upon information provided by the applicant. And if such information subsequently proves to be false, deceptive, incomplete, or inaccurate, this approval shall be modified, suspended, or revoked. And also the commission's authorized agents shall at all times have reasonable access to the site for the purpose of inspection and determination of compliance. I think that's everything that we need to put into the record to make it official. So I know you guys will do whatever magic you do post approval. Okay. Thank you. Congratulations to the Academy. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting.
You guys have the fun.
Okay. I don't want to leave you out, so. Okay. That takes us to, oh, sorry, here we go. So this takes us, well, the next one is the proposed text amendment, which right now there's no unfinished old business with that. It's still public hearing. This takes us to an item that has been on the agenda for a bit, and I believe we've gotten additional documentation. This is 6510737 1015 Route 198. This is Kyle and Patricia Noren. This is a one lot subdivision with boundary line adjustment. So the additional document, we received two additional documents. One we have, which is dated October 15th, which is the actual Connecticut DOT approval. And then there was something that was emailed out yesterday, I believe. Was it yesterday? Which is an updated site plan, which looks like it's listed as updated August 12th, if that's correct. So this we did issue out, even though it was right before the meeting. So do we have an electronic copy to show on the screen?
Yep.
Thank you for coming. I just, yep.
So the plans were revised in August, and it took until October 15th to get our approval of the DOT. The only changes to the plan from the ones that you looked at before, where we added a sightline demonstration, and we increased the length of the paved apron to the street line, and added
We just have to get the AV, I guess, set up. I guess we bored it and it shut off, so. Well, I also want to make certain that Doug's able to see everything on the screen because we're required to do that. Yep. But it looks like we're able to do that right now. Are you able to see it, Doug?
Yes.
We're not going to be able to hear him.
Oh, okay. We'll have to do that when it's time for a vote, though.
Yes.
Okay. If you want to go ahead while we're doing that.
Yeah, so.
Sorry.
Close up there, we don't quite need. There we go. So there's no changes to the site development parts of the plan or the boundaries or anything of that nature. The only changes are on the front of 198. You can slide down there. So it's very close. And with sightline demonstration, you can see we added, there's an existing culvert, an 18-inch cross culvert. There's a wetlands area, and the state has the right to discharge, and they wanted to see that on the plan. We increased the length of the paved apron to go all the way to the street line as required. But other than that, the plans are the same. We wetlands commission and other than the complicated nature of the fact that this was a lot that was inadvertently divided without the benefit of subdivision approval by the Noren family. This takes care of that, but there's also a boundary line adjustment, which there's an existing, 1 acre lot with a house, an existing house and septic system as well. And what they've done is they've added on to the rear from this subdivision lot to make the existing house lot conform and increase to, I believe, 2.5 acres. So we take a lot that was non-conforming for size, and we've added onto it. And now we have 2 nice lots. That's pretty much it. Not a lot more.
Any questions? Yes, Joe.
Yeah, parcel lot 13A with the existing house.
Yes.
Just curious why there's a proposed septic tank.
Well,
Existing and
there's an existing septic system. And the system is undersized and failed. And so they want to add a new modern septic system in the rear of the house.
which really doesn't have anything to do with the subdivision.
No,
Right.
no,
Okay.
no.
Yeah.
And that add-on has been approved by the town as part of this, as a deed. Anything else from folks? Anything from staff perspective since our last meeting?
I'm good.
Okay. Did you have something further, Joe? Oh, okay. So,
Can you expect a waiver of motion?
I would be, I just want to make certain, is there anything, Doug? I don't want to make certain there's nothing from you. Okay. All right. Yes, so then there would be a motion. We also have to take into consideration that there's the ENS control bond. What is this amount? $11,845.
The application as presented with the ENS control bond of $11,845.
$845. That's what's listed here. Am I correct, Julie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's listed in the proposal. I'm sorry, who seconded? Did you, Joe? Okay. So motion by Adeletta, seconded by Marcotte to approve the application with the ENS control bond, the amount of $11,845. Do we have any further discussion or any discussion on this motion? I'll go through the roll call. Joe Adeletta, Mark Blackmer, Sid Blodgett, Gail Dickinson, Nancy Frazier, Jeff Gordon, aye. Dean Gould, Jeff Marcotte, Doug Porter.
Aye.
That so passes. You guys will do whatever magic you normally do, right? Post approval. Congratulations. I knew it was a long process because of the Connecticut DOT, not because of us. Have a good night. Okay. That takes us to ZEO reports. If there's anything relative to the office permit enforcement, I can attest that you've been busy in the office.
Yeah.
Every time I show up, you're busy.
Staying,
So
trying to stay on top of
I
it.
don't see you taking any naps.
Nope.
So unless when they buzz me in and into town hall, there's a
Yeah, they
buzzer
wake
that
me
wakes
up.
you up.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So, I can actually use that in my office, a buzzer that wakes me up sometimes. So, but anything, I know we have your report here of What, permits and enforcement?
Yep,
Okay,
there has been a lot more permits since this was sent out. So you'll see that next month. I'll go from later in October.
okay. Anything relative to any of the enforcement items or they're just in the works?
They're just in the works, nothing yet.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about the permit or enforcement reports? Budget review and bill, there are no bills for us to vote on. I just recently signed off on a small bill for a public hearing notice. But that was appropriate. It was the right amount and for the right item. Does anyone have any items relative to our budget review and bills? Okay. Correspondence, we have one item, don't we?
Yeah.
This is from Robinson and Cole. This is about the cell tower, which is Verizon. Ken Baldwin is their attorney. And I guess this is just the siting council just notifying us that whatever modifications they want to do on the cell tower is exempt from whatever needing an updated permit or approval from the siting council. If anyone has any questions about this, you're more than welcome to access the files. They are big files, so we don't print them all. But you can actually go on to the Connecticut Siting Council website and see it all if you want. So, but this is just to notify us, which they do. So, okay. There's no other correspondence, correct? Okay. That takes us to agenda item 15. Do you want to,
Move to adjourn.
someone wish to second? Okay. I'm going to go through the roll. Joe Adaletta, Mark Blackburn, Sid Blodgett, Gail Dickinson,
Aye.
Nancy Frazier, Jeff Gordon, I'll vote aye. Dean Gould, Jeff Marcotte, and Doug Porter.
Aye.
We are so adjourned at, I got 9:04 or whatever time